The first human expedition to Kepler 42b had been decimated within days. The second barely survived a week. By the time the third colony ship arrived, the military escorts had quadrupled, and the planetary approach protocols had been rewritten with the blood of those who came before. Yet, despite all precautions, Kepler 42b remained largely unexplored, a verdant world of violet skies and crimson forests, teeming with life forms that defied conventional biology. A paradise to xenobiologists, a nightmare to everyone else. Maya Lin knew the statistics better than most. As the colony's lead xenobiologist, she had memorized the survival rates, attack patterns, and defensive recommendations for every documented predator on the planet. The Vorak Empire's Colonial Oversight Committee had made that mandatory before granting her research permit. Not that the Vorak particularly cared about human casualties. Their interest was purely economic. Kepler 42b fell within their sphere of influence, and dead colonists meant lost revenue. You understand that your research expeditions are conducted at your own risk, the Vorak liaison had told her during orientation, his leathery skin reflecting the artificial lighting in unsettling patterns. The Empire provides the framework for scientific exploration, but we are not responsible for the natural consequences of interacting with apex predators. Maya had nodded politely, having heard similar disclaimers on the 3 other frontier worlds she'd studied. What the Vorak representative didn't know, or perhaps didn't care about, was that Maya specialized in apex predator behavior across multiple planetary ecosystems. Where others saw mindless killing machines, she recognized complex social hierarchies, hunting patterns, and communication systems. Predators follow rules, she often explained to her nervous research assistants. Once you understand their language, their behavioral syntax, you can predict their actions with remarkable accuracy. This morning, however, Maya was alone. Her 2 assistants had fallen ill with a local bacterial infection, treatable but debilitating for 48 hours. The colony's administrator had strongly advised postponing her expedition to the eastern Cathra forest until they recovered. But the seasonal migration of the hexapod grazers had already begun. It was now, or wait another local year. Maya checked her equipment one final time. Specimen collection modules, atmospheric sensors, bioscanner, emergency beacon, and of course, her custom-designed plasma rifle. She had never fired it outside of mandatory training sessions. But Kepler 42b was not a world that forgave the unprepared. Initiating field log, day 73 on Kepler 42b. Maya spoke into her comm unit as she departed the colony's eastern gate. Heading into Sector 7 of the Cathra forest to document the seasonal migration of the hexapod grazers and their predator-prey dynamics. The morning air carried the sweet metallic scent of the silverleaf trees that dominated the landscape. Their reflective foliage captured and scattered the light from Kepler's red dwarf star, bathing everything in a surreal crimson glow. Beautiful, but disorienting for human perception. Another subtle reminder that she was an alien here. 3 hours into her trek, Maya's bioscanner detected a significant concentration of life forms ahead, exactly as her migration models had predicted. She slowed her pace, moving with deliberate steps to minimize noise. The forest floor was carpeted with a moss-like organism that thankfully absorbed sound, making stealth possible if one moved carefully enough. From her elevated position on a rocky outcrop, Maya finally spotted them, a herd of nearly 50 hexapods, their armored bodies gleaming as they stripped the vegetation with methodical precision. But something was wrong. The herd displayed agitation patterns she hadn't documented before, clustered defensive formations, sentinels positioned at irregular intervals, juveniles kept to the center. "They're being hunted," she whispered to her recorder. "But not by their usual predators. The formation suggests—" Her analysis was interrupted by a sound that made her blood freeze, a high-pitched, oscillating call that didn't match any species in her database. Then, came another sound. One she recognized immediately and wished she hadn't. The distinctive energy discharge of advanced weaponry. Poachers, or worse. Protocol dictated immediate withdrawal and notification of colony security. But the scientist in Maya demanded data, context. She carefully repositioned, using her scope to scan the disturbance at the far edge of the clearing. What she saw defied expectation. A lone Vorak warrior, immediately identifiable by the distinctive scale pattern and combat armor, was engaged in battle with three massive predators Maya had classified as Apex-class Razorbacks. The creatures, each the size of an earth grizzly but with 6 limbs and chitinous armor plating, had the Vorak surrounded. The warrior fought with astonishing skill, his ceremonial blade flashing as he severed a razorback limb with precision. His sidearm, some kind of energy weapon, had apparently malfunctioned, lying useless on the forest floor. 2 razorback corpses already lay still, but the remaining 3 were coordinating their attacks with unsettling intelligence. Maya watched, transfixed by the deadly ballet. The Vorak were renowned throughout the galaxy as fearsome warriors, apex predators in their own right. Their empire had expanded through conquest and intimidation, with combat prowess as their defining cultural value. To witness one in battle was both terrifying and mesmerizing. But even the most skilled warrior had limits. As the Vorak dispatched the 3rd Razorback, with a thrust that would have impressed the finest human swordmasters, the 4th creature attacked from behind, its primary claws tearing through the warrior's armor at the vulnerable junction between shoulder and neck. The Vorak roared, a sound Maya felt in her chest more than heard, and spun to decapitate his attacker in a single, fluid motion. But the damage was done. Dark ichor, the Vorak equivalent of blood, sprayed in an arterial pattern that Maya knew from her xenobiology training meant critical injury. The 5th Razorback, displaying the cunning that had earned the species its apex classification, held back until this precise moment of weakness. It charged as the Vorak warrior stumbled, his blade still embedded in the 4th creature's remains. Maya's decision happened at a level beyond conscious thought. Her plasma rifle discharged with a precision that surprised even her, striking the final Razorback mid-leap. The creature crashed to the forest floor, twitching as its nervous system failed. In the sudden silence, Maya found herself walking forward, medical kit already in hand. Every rational part of her mind screamed about the foolishness of approaching an injured Vorak warrior, a member of a species known for its violence, xenophobia, and particularly their distrust of humans, whom they considered physically inferior and strategically unreliable. The warrior had collapsed to one knee, but still clutched a secondary blade in his free hand. As Maya approached, his head turned with predatory swiftness, golden eyes fixing on her with an intensity that nearly stopped her advance. "I'm a doctor," she said slowly, knowing the Vorak translator implants would convert her words. "A healer. You're losing blood quickly." The Vorak made a sound, a clicking growl that her own translator couldn't process. Probably an obscenity or threat. But he didn't raise his weapon as she knelt beside him. "I need to seal the wound," Maya explained, keeping her voice calm and movement slow. "Your subclavian artery equivalent is severed, without treatment. You have perhaps 3 minutes before fatal exsanguination." The warrior's eyes, vertical pupils, set in golden irises, studied her with an intelligence that belied the common human perception of Vorak as merely sophisticated brutes. After a moment that stretched like eternity, he lowered his weapon. "Why?" The translator finally caught his words. "Would prey help predator?" Maya's hands were already applying pressure to the wound, her medical scanner assessing the damage. "I'm a scientist. We're all part of the same ecosystem here. Predator, prey. These are just roles, not moral categories." She administered a synthetic clotting agent, specifically formulated for Vorak physiology, standard issue for frontier medical kits in Vorak-controlled space. The warrior watched her work with an expression she couldn't read. "Your name," he demanded, though his voice had weakened. "Maya Lin, xenobiologist from Earth Colony." "Hroth-Thala," he replied, following what she recognized as formal Vorak introduction protocol. "Seventh Claw of the Imperial Vanguard." Maya nodded, focusing on stabilizing his condition. The wound was worse than she initially assessed. Not just the arterial damage, but significant trauma to surrounding tissues. The clotting agent had stemmed the immediate crisis, but without proper medical intervention, infection would likely prove fatal within days. "You need evacuation to a medical facility," she told him, administering a broad-spectrum antibiotic. "I can activate my emergency beacon." "No," the word came with surprising force. "My final hunt. My honor." Maya frowned, recalling fragments of Vorak cultural briefings. Warriors who had reached a certain age sometimes embarked on solitary hunts, seeking worthy adversaries for a final, glorious battle. A ritualized death, rather than the shame of declining combat prowess. "You came here to die?" she asked, unable to keep the disbelief from her voice. Hroth-Thala's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "To die gloriously, not like this." "Bleeding out from a wound inflicted by a worthy opponent seems fairly glorious to me," Maya observed dryly. The Vorak made a sound that her translator interpreted with surprising accuracy. Laughter, albeit pained. "The Razorbacks were merely the prelude," he managed. "I tracked a greater prey, a shadow stalker, rare, dangerous." Maya's scientific interest immediately piqued. Shadow stalkers were quasi-mythical predators, reported by colonial scouts, but never properly documented. "You found one?" "It found me," Hroth corrected. "When I weakened. It watches now." A chill ran down Maya's spine. She resisted the urge to scan their surroundings, instead focusing on her patient. "All the more reason to activate the beacon." "No." This time, the refusal came with a gesture, his hand grasping her wrist with surprising gentleness, for a being capable of tearing the limbs from combat robots. "My final hunt. My final memory. Let it be. This curiosity." "What curiosity?" "You, human female. Prey species helping predator." His breathing had become labored, the translator struggling to keep pace with his fading voice. "Why risk your life for enemy?" Maya continued working as she considered her answer. "I don't see you as an enemy. Just another living being who needs help." "Compassion," Hroth said, the translator giving the word a strange intonation. "Rare trait, powerful weapon." Maya was about to object to the characterization of compassion as a weapon when she noticed a change in the warrior's eyes. A slight unfocusing. Shock was setting in. "Stay with me," she urged, administering a stimulant. "Tell me about your homeworld. Keep talking." For the next 20 minutes, as Maya worked to stabilize his condition, Hroth-Thala described the volcanic plains of the Vorak homeworld in surprisingly poetic terms. He spoke of honor duels beneath twin moons, of hatchling ceremonies where young warriors received their first battle scars, of the magnificent crystal spires of the imperial capital that captured and refracted sunlight into weapons during ceremonial displays. Throughout his monologue, Maya noticed his combat helm was still recording, a standard feature for Vorak warriors, allowing their final moments to be witnessed by their clan. The thought was sobering. She was being documented helping an enemy of humanity, or at least, that's how some would view it. "Why did you save me from the final Razorback?" Hroth asked suddenly, his voice stronger than before. The medications were working, at least temporarily. "Instinct, maybe," Maya admitted. "Or professional curiosity. I've never had the chance to examine Vorak physiology up close." This earned another clicking laugh. You are strange prey, Maya Lin. I told you I don't think in those categories. Yet they exist. His golden eyes fixed on her with renewed intensity. The galaxy divides into predator and prey. The strong consume the weak. This is natural law. Natural law is descriptive, not prescriptive, Maya countered, surprising herself with the philosophical turn. Just because something happens in nature doesn't mean it's the only possibility. Hroth's expression shifted in a way her human perception couldn't quite interpret. Possibility, he repeated. Yes, that is why I came. Final hunt. Final possibility. His vitals were stabilizing, but Maya knew it was temporary. Without proper surgical intervention, the internal damage would eventually overcome the medications. She checked her comm unit. No signal this deep in the forest. The emergency beacon would work, but he had expressly forbidden its use. Your hunt doesn't have to end here, she said carefully. Let me call for evacuation. No, Hroth replied, but with less conviction than before. Though, I admit curiosity about your world, your science, this compassion concept. Maya recognized the opening. Then let me save you, and we can discuss all of that. A cultural exchange? Isn't knowledge its own form of conquest? The Vorak warrior considered this, mandibles working slowly as he processed her words. Clever prey uses predator's values against him. Not against you, for you. Before he could respond, a sound from the surrounding forest froze them both, a low, oscillating hum that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. The Shadow Stalker. Hroth's body tensed, warrior instincts overriding his weakened state. It comes! Final hunt! He struggled to rise, reaching for his blade. You'll die, Maya said bluntly, pressing him back down. With honor. Is there honor in wasting the gift of life? In rejecting the possibility of new knowledge? She was improvising now, drawing on the fragments of Vorak cultural values she'd studied. Isn't victory better than glorious defeat? The humming grew louder, and Maya caught movement in her peripheral vision, something massive shifting between the silverleaf trees, its outline blurring as if reality itself bent around it. Hroth stared at her, genuine conflict visible in his alien features. You would face Shadowstalker for me? Enemy warrior? I told you, Maya said, reaching for her plasma rifle while maintaining pressure on his wound. I don't see enemies, just possibilities. What happened next occurred too quickly for Maya to fully process. The Shadowstalker, a creature of impossible dimensions and nightmare geometry, lunged from the forest edge. Hroth, with strength that defied his injuries, shoved Maya aside and raised his secondary blade in defiance. The creature's appendages, like liquid shadow given form, struck with precision. Maya fired her plasma rifle on instinct, the energy burst illuminating the creature's true form for a split second. A vision her mind immediately began suppressing as a defense mechanism. Hroth's blade connected simultaneously, a perfect strike that would have killed any normal organism. The Shadowstalker wasn't normal. It recoiled, wounded but far from defeated, and prepared for a second attack. Hroth, his strength fading, turned to Maya with sudden clarity. Beacon, he commanded. Now. She didn't hesitate, activating the emergency signal. The Shadowstalker paused, its senses apparently detecting the energy pulse. It retreated several meters, hovering at the forest edge, like a storm cloud contemplating its target. It fears rescue signal, Hroth observed, his voice weakening again. Smart hunter. Maya positioned herself between the wounded warrior and the Shadowstalker, plasma rifle raised. Help will come soon. Just stay with me. Maya Lin, Hroth said, his translator struggling with what seemed to be formal phrasing. You have acted with honor beyond your station. Remember me to my clan. Before she could respond, His eyes closed, and his breathing slowed dramatically. The combat helm continued recording, its small indicator light blinking steadily. For 17 agonizing minutes, Maya maintained her position, dividing her attention between the Shadowstalker prowling the perimeter and Hroth's deteriorating condition. When the Colonial Security Shuttle finally arrived, the creature vanished like mist. There one moment, gone the next. The human security officers were visibly shocked to find Maya tending to a Vorak warrior. Their commander, a veteran of frontier conflicts, approached cautiously. "Dr. Lin, step away from the hostile," he ordered, weapon raised. "He's not a hostile, he's a patient," Maya replied without looking up. "And he needs immediate medical evacuation." "That's a Vorak elite warrior," the commander emphasized, as if she might have somehow missed this fact. "Protocol requires—" "I know exactly who he is," Maya interrupted. "And I know that the Vorak Colonial Treaty of 2387 requires all signatories to provide medical assistance to distressed personnel, regardless of species." She fixed the commander with a stare that brooked no argument. "So, unless you want to trigger a diplomatic incident, I suggest you help me get him aboard." The commander's expression suggested he'd rather eat his own sidearm, but he gestured to his medics. "Stabilize for transport, and somebody contact the Vorak liaison office. This is above my pay grade." As they worked to transfer Hroth to a medical stretcher, Maya noticed his combat helm was still recording. She leaned close to the dying warrior and spoke softly. "I don't know if you can hear me, Hroth Thala, but today was a good hunt. Not your final one, if I have anything to say about it. There are better victories than death, even for the greatest warriors." She thought she saw his mandibles move slightly, but it might have been wishful thinking. The trip back to the colony was tense, with the security team treating the unconscious Vorak like a live explosive. Maya refused to leave his side, continuing to monitor his vitals and adjust medications. The colony's medical facilities weren't equipped for Vorak physiology, but she had studied comparative xenobiology extensively. She could keep him stable until proper help arrived. What she hadn't anticipated was the speed of the Vorak response. 3 hours after their return to the colony, as Maya was elbow-deep in emergency surgery to repair Hroth's damaged circulatory system, the colony's proximity alarms blared. A Vorak battlecruiser had entered orbit without warning or permission, and a delegation was already descending to the surface. "They can wait," Maya told the nervous administrator who had come to inform her. "I'm rather busy keeping their warrior alive." "Dr. Lin, you don't understand," the administrator replied, his face pale. "That's a dominance-class warship. It carries enough firepower to glass half the continent, and they're demanding to speak with you specifically." Maya's hands remained steady as she finished suturing an alien blood vessel that had no human equivalent. "Then they can wait in line like everyone else who wants my attention right now." The administrator looked like he might faint. "The Vorak High Commander himself is leading the delegation." That made Maya pause, if only for a moment. The High Commander, Zorvak, if she recalled correctly, was the military leader of the entire Vorak Empire, second in authority only to the reclusive Emperor. His presence at a remote colony world was unprecedented. "Inform the High Commander that I am currently performing life-saving surgery on one of his warriors, and I will meet with him when my patient is stable," she replied, returning to her work. "And for heaven's sake, offer them refreshments or whatever the Vorak equivalent of diplomacy is." 90 minutes later, having done everything medically possible for Hroth Thala, Maya finally emerged from surgery. She took a moment to clean up, changing from blood-soaked scrubs into a fresh uniform, before facing what would undoubtedly be an uncomfortable diplomatic situation. The colony's main conference room had been hastily repurposed for the Vorak delegation. Maya entered to find 6 towering warriors in ceremonial armor, flanking an even larger figure whose elaborate battle regalia marked him clearly as the High Commander. The colony's administrative staff huddled at the far end of the table, looking collectively like prey animals in the presence of wolves. Dr. Maya Lin, the High Commander's translator, rendered his clicking speech into flawless standard. "You have placed the Vorak Empire in an unusual position." Maya approached the table with the calm professionalism that had carried her through expeditions on worlds where humans were considered delicacies. "High Commander Zorvak, I apologize for the delay. Your warrior required immediate surgical intervention." "Hroth Thala," Zorvak corrected, "is not merely a warrior. He is bloodkin to the Emperor, undertaking his glory hunt, a sacred rite." The massive Vorak's golden eyes studied her with unnerving intensity. "A rite you interrupted." The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Maya was acutely aware that her next words might determine not just her fate, but potentially that of the entire colony. "With respect, High Commander, I interrupted nothing. I provided medical assistance to a warrior who had fought with exceptional skill and honor against overwhelming odds." She met his gaze directly. "Where I come from, preserving life is also sacred." Zorvak's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sound her translator didn't attempt to interpret. The other warriors shifted, hands never far from their ceremonial blades. "You misunderstand, human doctor," Zorvak finally said. "Hroth Thala's combat helm transmitted his entire hunt. We witnessed everything. Your intervention. Your conversation." Maya's stomach tightened. Of course, the recording had been transmitted back to the Vorak fleet in real time. Everything she had said and done in the forest had been observed by who knew how many Vorak commanders. "Then you know I acted with respect for Warrior Thala," she replied carefully. "Indeed." Zorvak made a gesture, and one of his warriors activated a holographic projector in the center of the table. The image that appeared showed Maya kneeling beside the wounded Hroth, applying pressure to his wound while simultaneously raising her plasma rifle to defend against the Shadow Stalker. Her voice came through clearly. "I don't see enemies, just possibilities." Maya watched herself in the recording with a strange detachment, aware of the colony administrator's wide-eyed stare and the intense focus of every Vorak warrior. Zorvak deactivated the projection with another gesture. "For 3,000 years, the Vorak have lived by the code of dominance. The strong prevail, the weak perish. This is natural law." He used the exact phrase Hroth had used in the forest. "Yet here we observe a physically inferior being, risking death to preserve the life of a natural predator." The High Commander rose to his full height, nearly 8 feet of armored, lethal alien warrior. The ancient codex speaks of such moments, when strength is transcended by honor, when the prey becomes worthy through actions beyond their nature. One of the colony administrators made a small, involuntary sound of surprise. Maya maintained her composure, though her mind raced to recall anything she'd read about the ancient codex, a legendary text rarely mentioned in xenocultural studies of the Vorak. "Dr. Maya Lin," Zorvak continued, his voice taking on a formal cadence that the translator struggled to convey. "By the authority of the ancient codex, Chapter 17, Verse of Transcendent Honor, you are hereby declared Kravash, the Protected One." The other Vorak warriors immediately straightened, placing their right claws over their chest armor in what was unmistakably a salute. "I don't understand," Maya admitted. "No, you wouldn't," Zorvak acknowledged. "The Kravash designation has not been invoked in 7 centuries. It marks you as one who has transcended the natural order through actions of exceptional honor. From this moment forward, you exist under the direct protection of the Vorak Empire." Maya blinked, trying to process the implications. "Protection?" 3,500 warriors of the Imperial Vanguard now stand as your shield," Zorvak explained. "Any threat to you is a threat to the Empire itself. Any harm done to you will be answered with the full might of our forces." The colony administrator made a choking sound. "You're placing an entire battle legion at the disposal of a human scientist?" Zorvak's gaze flicked dismissively toward the man. "Not at her disposal. As her guardians, there is a distinction your prey mind might not grasp." Maya intervened before the situation could deteriorate. "High Commander, while I'm honored by this designation, I'm simply a xenobiologist. My work requires freedom of movement, independence." "And you shall have it," Zorvak interrupted. "The Kravash walks their chosen path. The shield follows but does not lead." "What about Hroth-Thala?" Maya asked, redirecting the conversation to her patient. "Will he recover?" Something resembling approval flickered in Zorvak's alien eyes. "Our medical officers report that your intervention preserved his life. Unusual for one not trained in Vorak physiology." "I've studied comparative xenobiology," Maya explained. "The principles are often transferable across species." "Indeed." Zorvak made another gesture, and a warrior stepped forward with a small, ornate box. "Hroth-Thala left specific instructions should he survive his glory hunt. This belongs to you now." Maya accepted the box cautiously. Inside lay a ceremonial dagger of unmistakable Vorak design, smaller than their standard weapons, but crafted with exquisite detail. Its blade made from a material that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. "This is Hroth-Thala's bloodclaw," Zorvak explained. "Passed through his lineage for 12 generations. He names you bloodkin in recognition of your actions." The implications were staggering. Maya had gone from anonymous scientist to someone with apparent significance in the Vorak hierarchy in the span of a single day. The diplomatic ramifications alone would keep the colonial administration busy for months. "Please convey my gratitude to Warrior Thala," she said, carefully closing the box. "I look forward to continuing our conversation when he has recovered." "That may not be possible," Zorvak replied. "Once healed, he will return to the homeworld to complete the rituals associated with surviving the glory hunt. But his gift and his testimony have elevated you nonetheless." The meeting concluded shortly after, with Zorvak informing the stunned colonial officials that a Vorak protection detail would be established on planet immediately. As the warriors filed out, the High Commander paused beside Maya. "You spoke of possibilities to Hroth-Thala," he said, his voice pitched for her alone. "The Vorak have not considered new possibilities in many centuries. Perhaps that is our weakness, not our strength." Before she could respond, he was gone, leaving Maya to face the wide-eyed stares of the colonial administration. "Would someone mind explaining what just happened?" the administrator asked weakly. Maya looked down at the ornate box in her hands. "I think I just became the most protected human in the galaxy, and possibly changed interspecies relations forever." Over the next 3 weeks, she would later dictate into her official report. The implications of the Kravash designation began to ripple outward through galactic politics, like a stone dropped in still water. The Vorak protection detail established itself with characteristic efficiency, a small contingent stationed permanently at the colony, with regular patrols by Vorak ships in near orbit. Contrary to Maya's fears, they were remarkably unobtrusive, maintaining a respectful distance during her research expeditions while ensuring her safety from Kepler-42b's numerous predators. What proved more challenging was the reaction from other species and human authorities. The first diplomatic incident occurred when a representative from the Conscious Confederation, a coalition of 15 sentient species with generally anti-Vorak policies, arrived unannounced at the colony. This protection arrangement sets a dangerous precedent. The representative, a tall, willowy being named Colline, informed Maya during an impromptu meeting. "The Vorak Empire has systematically used military presence as a precursor to territorial expansion for millennia. They're protecting me, not occupying the planet," Maya pointed out. And I didn't exactly request the arrangement. Colleen's large, multifaceted eyes blinked in patterns expressing skepticism. Intention matters less than consequence. Dr. Lin, several Confederation worlds are already proposing trade restrictions against this colony, viewing it as compromised by Vorak influence. The threat was clear, if diplomatically phrased. Maya felt a headache forming behind her eyes. I'm a scientist, not a politician. My interest is in understanding Kepler's ecosystem, not galactic power dynamics. Yet you now find yourself at the center of those dynamics, Colina observed. The Cravash designation has not been invoked in centuries, and never for a non-Vorak. You have become a symbol, whether you wish it or not. The conversation grew increasingly tense when a Vorak warrior entered the room, ostensibly to deliver a routine security update. Colleen's translator produced what Maya strongly suspected were expletives before the representative abruptly concluded the meeting. Similar encounters followed. Earth colonial authorities sent a special envoy who alternated between interrogating Maya about Vorak military capabilities and attempting to recruit her as some kind of diplomatic asset. 3 different xenoanthropologists requested extended interviews about her unique cultural integration experience. Through it all, Maya attempted to continue her research. The Vorak presence had unexpected benefits. Their warriors possessed acute senses that detected predators long before her instruments could, and their knowledge of hunting behaviors provided insights she might have missed otherwise. The Shadowstalker hunts by perception manipulation. Her primary security contact, a younger warrior named Kroth, explained during an expedition to document the creature. It bends light and sound around itself, creating a void in your awareness until it strikes. Maya recorded his explanation with fascination. That would explain the psychological effect when I glimpsed its true form. My brain couldn't process what it was seeing. Kroth clicked his mandibles in affirmation. Few species can. The ancient codex speaks of shadowstalkers as tests of worthiness. Only those who can face the unknowable are truly strong. This casual reference to Vorak philosophy sparked a series of conversations that evolved into something approaching friendship. Maya learned that beneath their fearsome reputation, Vorak culture contains surprising depth, intricate poetic traditions, philosophical debates spanning centuries, and complex family structures built around shared honor rather than mere genetic relation. In return, she found herself explaining human concepts that the Vorak found baffling. Art created purely for aesthetic pleasure, rather than to commemorate victories. The value placed on individual self-expression, the human capacity for finding strength in vulnerability. Your species confuses predator and prey behaviors, Kroth observed during one such discussion. You display dominance traits and submission traits simultaneously. It makes you unpredictable. Maya laughed. I'll take that as a compliment. These peaceful exchanges, however, existed against a backdrop of escalating tensions. 6 weeks after the Cravash designation, the Conscious Confederation announced a partial blockade of Kepler-42b, citing security concerns regarding unprecedented Vorak military presence in a neutral system. The same day, 3 additional Vorak warships entered orbit. This is spiraling out of control, Maya told the colonial administrator, who had aged visibly since the whole affair began. People are using me as an excuse to advance pre-existing agendas. The Earth Diplomatic Corps is sending their senior negotiator, the administrator replied wearily. They're proposing a summit at Colony Central to resolve the situation before it deteriorates further. Maya rubbed her temples. And I suppose I'm expected to attend. You're the centerpiece, Dr. Lin, the Cravash herself. The title still felt foreign, uncomfortable, like clothing designed for a different species entirely. The summit was scheduled for the following week at Colony Central, the administrative hub for human settlements in the sector. Representatives from 17 species would attend, including the High Commander himself. Maya spent the intervening days completing as much field research as possible, suspecting her freedom of movement might soon be curtailed by political realities. On the evening before her departure for Colony Central, she visited the medical facility where Hroth Thala had been treated before his transfer to the Vorak homeworld. To her surprise, she found Hroth waiting outside. "The Bloodkin left something for you," the warrior explained, handing her a small data crystal. He recorded it before departing. In the privacy of her quarters, Maya activated the crystal. Hroth's image appeared, still weakened but alive, his golden eyes bright with what she now recognized as intensity rather than mere aggression. "Maya Lin of Earth." The recording began. "You spoke of possibilities in the forest, of compassion as something other than weakness. These are strange concepts to the Vorak mind, yet they have power." Hroth's image seemed to look directly at her, though of course it was only a recording. "I have lived by the code of dominance for 9 decades. I have conquered enemies across 12 systems. I sought the glory hunt, believing it the culmination of a warrior's existence." He paused, mandibles working in what she now recognized as contemplation. "Yet in what should have been my final moments, I learned more from a human scientist than from a lifetime of combat." Maya felt an unexpected tightness in her throat. The ancient codex speaks of transcendent honor, actions that rise above the natural order. For millennia, we have interpreted this solely through the lens of combat prowess. Perhaps this was too narrow a view. Hroth's image straightened, assuming a formal posture. "I go now to the homeworld, where I will speak of what I have witnessed, of strength found in unexpected forms, of honor that transcends physical dominance." The recording ended with a traditional Vorak farewell, a gesture Maya now understood conveyed respect between equals, not submission. She sat in silence for a long time afterward, the data crystal cool in her palm. Tomorrow would bring politics, negotiations, the clash of civilizations using her as their focal point. But tonight, she had been reminded why it mattered. One being, one conversation, one moment of connection across the vast biological and cultural divide that separated species. It wasn't just possible, it had already happened. Colony Central hummed with nervous energy when Maya arrived the next morning. The sprawling administrative complex had been transformed into a diplomatic fortress, with security details from a dozen species eyeing each other warily in corridors designed for bureaucrats, not warriors. The Vorak contingent dominated the central plaza, 40 elite warriors in ceremonial armor, forming a living barrier between Maya and everyone else. High Commander Zorvak stood at their center, a monument to controlled aggression. The Earth diplomatic team met Maya at her designated quarters, led by Ambassador Elena Sorokin, a veteran negotiator with a reputation for resolving seemingly impossible conflicts. "Dr. Lin," Sorokin greeted her with a firm handshake and evaluating gaze. "You've created quite the situation." "Not intentionally," Maya replied. "The best diplomatic crises rarely are." A hint of humor cracked the ambassador's professional veneer. "But intention aside, we need to resolve this before someone makes a miscalculation. The Confederation fleet positioning at the system's edge has the Vorak battle group on high alert." Maya felt the weight of responsibility settling heavily on her shoulders. "What's the plan?" "The formal negotiations begin tomorrow. Today is for bilateral meetings, establishing parameters." Sorokin consulted her tablet. "The Vorak have requested you attend their preparatory session." "As the Cravash?" Maya guessed. "Precisely. Your unique position gives you influence we'd be fools to ignore." The ambassador fixed her with a pointed look. "The Vorak rarely respect non-warriors, yet they've elevated you to a sacred status. We need to understand why, and how to leverage it." Maya frowned. "I'm not a diplomatic asset to be leveraged. Ambassador, everyone is an asset in negotiations this delicate." Sorokin replied unapologetically. The question is whether you'll be used by others or help shape the outcome yourself. The ambassador had a point, Maya conceded internally. Stepping back would only allow others to control the narrative surrounding her actions and the Kravash designation. What do you suggest? Listen to the Vorak proposal today. Report back to me. We'll develop a strategy that preserves your scientific mission while defusing this standoff. Sorokin's expression softened slightly. For what it's worth, I've read your research. Your work on predator-prey dynamics is exceptional, too valuable to be derailed by interspecies politics. The Vorak meeting took place in a ceremonial chamber they had apparently reconfigured to their specifications. Maya entered to find High Commander Zorvak and 5 senior warriors seated around a stone table that definitely hadn't been part of the original colony central architecture. Kravash, Zorvak acknowledged her with the formal salute. We welcome your presence. Maya took the indicated seat, noticeably different from the others, adorned with symbols she didn't recognize. Thank you for including me in these discussions, High Commander. It is your right, Zorvak replied, as if stating an obvious fact. The blockade exists because of your designation. The negotiations concern your protection. One of the other warriors, older than Zorvak, with battle scars visible even through his ceremonial armor, leaned forward. What the High Commander means, Kravash, is that tomorrow's summit will determine how your protection is maintained while respecting the concerns of lesser species. Maya caught the dismissive terminology. I believe the Confederation and Earth representatives would prefer different terminology. Honored warrior. A sound rippled through the gathered Vorak, the clicking laughter she had first heard from Hroth in the forest. The older warrior's mandibles spread in what she now recognized as approval. Direct speech. Good. The Kravash should not concern herself with diplomatic facades. Speaking of directness, Maya said, seizing the opening, I'd like to understand exactly what the Kravash designation means to the Vorak, beyond the protection aspect. Zorvak exchanged glances with the older warrior, who nodded once. The ancient codex, Zorvak began, teaches that strength alone is insufficient for true dominance. Honor, acting according to one's nature with perfect integrity. This is what separates mere predators from the Vorak. The older warrior continued. The Kravash occurs when a being transcends their natural role through perfect honor. When prey acts with the courage of predator, yet remains true to prey virtues, it creates imbalance in the natural order. This imbalance must be corrected, another warrior added. The only solution is for the strongest predators to ensure the Kravash's protection, restoring balance through service. Maya processed this explanation, noting the quasi-religious overtones. So, the protection isn't just pragmatic. It's a fundamental requirement of Vorak philosophy? It is sacred duty, Zorvak confirmed. More binding than any treaty or alliance. To fail in protecting the Kravash would dishonor the entire empire. The implications were staggering. No wonder the diplomatic corps was scrambling. They were dealing not with typical Vorak expansionism, but with a cultural imperative that transcended normal political calculations. And what does the Kravash designation require of me? Maya asked carefully. Nothing, the older warrior replied, seeming surprised by the question. You have already fulfilled your role by transcending it. You continue your existence as you choose. We adjust to accommodate. The conversation continued for another hour, with the Vorak outlining their proposed security arrangements. Reduced visible presence but enhanced monitoring systems. Regular patrols disguised as scientific expeditions. And a rapid response protocol for any threats to Maya's safety. When she finally returned to her quarters, Ambassador Sorokin was waiting. Well, the diplomat prompted. Maya described the meeting in detail, watching the ambassador's expression shift from professional interest to genuine concern. This is worse than we thought, Sorokin concluded. They've framed the entire situation within their religious philosophical framework. Secular diplomatic solutions won't address their core motivations. Is that necessarily bad? Maya asked. Their commitment seems genuine. Genuine religious fervor is exactly what makes this dangerous, Sorokin countered. The Vorak are willing to risk interstellar conflict over your protection because they view it as cosmically necessary, not just politically expedient. The ambassador paced the small room. We need to find a compromise that satisfies their cultural imperatives while removing the military presence that's triggering the Confederation blockade. What if, Maya suggested slowly, we reframe the entire conversation? The Vorak see protection as their sacred duty. What if we expand the definition of protection beyond the physical? Sorokin paused mid-stride. Go on. My work involves understanding and preserving ecological systems, protecting species and environments. What if the Vorak protection extended to that work, rather than just my person? A calculating look entered the ambassador's eyes. Scientific cooperation instead of military presence. Interesting approach. But will the Vorak accept such a metaphorical interpretation of their duty? There's only one way to find out, Maya replied. The summit began the following morning with all the pomp and tension such gatherings inevitably entailed. 17 species, each with their own delegation, security concerns, and diplomatic agendas, crowded the Grand Chamber of Colony Central. The Vorak warriors formed a phalanx behind High Commander Zorvak, while Confederation representatives clustered opposite, the physical arrangement mirroring the political divide. Maya sat at the central table, alongside Ambassador Sorokin, uncomfortably aware that every eye in the chamber, some with multiple pupils, others with compound structures entirely unlike human vision, was fixed on her. The opening statements followed predictable patterns. The Confederation representative condemned Vorak military presence in a neutral system. Earth diplomats expressed concern about escalation risks. Various aligned species offered statements supporting one side or the other. Then, it was the Vorak turn. High Commander Zorvak rose to his full, intimidating height. The Vorak Empire does not recognize the authority of this gathering to interfere with sacred duty, he began bluntly. The Kravash must be protected. This is non-negotiable. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Maya noticed several diplomatic aides wincing at the uncompromising tone. However, Zorvak continued, the form of that protection may be discussed. A subtle shift in the room's atmosphere, the faintest hint of possibility, where moments before there had been only confrontation. Ambassador Sorokin seized the opening masterfully. The Earth Colonial Authority appreciates the Vorak Empire's flexibility. Perhaps Dr. Lin herself might offer perspective, as the individual most affected by these arrangements. All attention shifted to Maya. She rose slowly, feeling the weight of interstellar politics pressing down on her shoulders. I am a scientist, she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. My work involves understanding the complex relationships between species, predator and prey, parasite and host, symbiont and partner. What I've learned is that these relationships are rarely simple. They evolve, they adapt. Sometimes they transform entirely. She turned slightly to address the Vorak delegation directly. High Commander, when I encountered Hroth-Thala in the forest, I didn't see an enemy, or even a patient. I saw a fellow living being whose existence had value, whose knowledge and experience deserved preservation. Zorvak's golden eyes remained fixed on her, unreadable but attentive. The Kravash designation honors that moment of connection across species boundaries. Maya continued. But true protection isn't achieved through military force alone. The greatest threats to understanding, to possibility, are ignorance and fear. She gestured to encompass the chamber. This summit exists because of fear. Fear of the Vorak, fear of changing power dynamics, fear of the unknown. Maya took a breath, acutely aware she was either about to bridge a diplomatic chasm or widen it irreparably. I propose that the protection granted by the Kravash designation be expanded beyond my person to include my work, the preservation of knowledge and understanding across species boundaries. Rather than warships, I would be protected by cooperation. Vorak warriors would serve as scientific partners, bringing their unparalleled observational skills and knowledge of predator behavior to my research team. Murmurs again filled the chamber, confusion from some delegations, calculating interest from others. The blockade would be lifted, Maya continued. As military vessels withdraw from orbit, in their place, a joint scientific initiative would be established on Kepler 42b, with Vorak participation alongside researchers from Earth and any Confederation worlds that wish to contribute. She turned to face the Confederation representatives. This arrangement satisfies the sacred duty of protection, while removing the military presence that concerns neighboring systems. More importantly, it transforms a potential conflict into an opportunity for unprecedented interspecies cooperation. Ambassador Sorokin's expression remained professionally neutral, but Maya caught the slight nod of approval. For several long moments, silence gripped the chamber. Then High Commander Zorvak spoke, his translated voice carrying easily to every corner. "The Kravash speaks with wisdom that confirms her designation," he began. "Protection takes many forms. Knowledge preserved is victory achieved." He turned to face the Confederation delegation. "The Vorak Empire will withdraw its battle fleet from orbit. Warriors assigned to the Kravash protection will serve as her scientific escorts, without visible weapons, but no less vigilant." Then came the statement that truly shocked the assembly. "However, let all species represented here understand clearly, any threat to the Kravash, her work, or her discoveries will be considered violation of the highest honor law of the Vorak Empire. The consequences would be significant." The implicit threat hung in the air like a drawn blade, but delivered in the context of scientific cooperation rather than military posturing. It carried a different weight, less immediately alarming, more structurally binding. The Confederation representative, after hasty consultation with their team, responded cautiously. "The proposed scientific initiative presents an acceptable framework, provided specific parameters regarding Vorak presence are clearly defined." From that point, the summit transformed from potential flashpoint to detailed negotiation. Over the next 3 days, representatives hammered out the specifics of what would become known as the Kepler Scientific Accord, the first interspecies agreement founded on the principle of knowledge preservation as a form of protection. Maya found herself at the center of these negotiations, not as a diplomat but as the scientific authority establishing research priorities and collaboration protocols. The Vorak warriors, initially silent and intimidating presences, gradually began contributing their own observations about Kepler's ecology, revealing knowledge gained through centuries of hunting expeditions that human scientists had never accessed. By the summit's conclusion, the immediate crisis had been averted. The Confederation agreed to lift the blockade. The Vorak battle fleet withdrew to the system's edge before departing entirely. A framework for scientific cooperation had been established that would bring researchers from 7 species to Kepler 42b within the year. And Maya Lin, the reluctant Kravash, found herself directing what would become the largest xenobiological research initiative in human colonial history. "The final irony," she recorded in her personal journal 3 months later, "is that being designated the Protected One has given me unprecedented freedom. The Vorak escorts who accompany my expeditions have proven invaluable research partners. Their predatory instincts detecting patterns my instruments miss entirely. Meanwhile, the political significance of the Kravash designation has ensured funding and resources beyond anything I could have secured through normal scientific channels." Her journal entry continued. "Yesterday, I received a communication from the Vorak homeworld. Hroth Thala has completed his post-glory hunt rituals and been elevated to the Council of Elders, an unusual honor for a warrior his age. His first official act was to propose a review of the ancient codex's teachings on strength and honor. Maya paused in her recording, looking out the window of her research station at the crimson forests of Kepler 42b. In the clearing below, 3 Vorak warriors were demonstrating hunting techniques to a group of wide-eyed human graduate students who had arrived on the latest transport. The concept of compassion, she continued, appears to be spreading through younger Vorak warriors like a benevolent contagion. Their questions about human motivations and ethics have evolved from confused dismissal to genuine curiosity. 2 of my escorts have requested formal instruction in xenobiology, expressing interest in understanding prey species behavior beyond hunting relevance. She smiled at the memory of Croth, her primary security contact, carefully examining a delicate silverleaf specimen through a microscope. His massive claws incongruously gentle as he adjusted the focus. Most significant of all, she dictated, the High Council has scheduled an unprecedented gathering on the Vorak homeworld next month. A summit devoted entirely to discussing the concept of transcendent honor and its implications for interspecies relations. I have been invited to attend as the living embodiment of this principle. Maya closed her journal program and stepped outside, breathing in the metallic sweet air of her adopted world. One of the Vorak warriors, a female assigned to the research team despite the traditionally male-dominated nature of their military, noticed her appearance and offered the formal salute. "Kravash," the warrior acknowledged. "The students have demonstrated surprising aptitude for tracking techniques. Perhaps there is predator potential in humans after all." Maya smiled. "Or perhaps the boundaries between predator and prey were never as fixed as we imagined." The warrior considered this with the intense focus characteristic of her species. "Possibility," she finally said, echoing Hroth-Thala's words from the forest. "Yes, that is why we are here." As night fell over the research station, Maya reviewed the data from the day's expeditions. New species documented, new behaviors observed, new connections established between organisms that had evolved on this distant world. But more significant were the connections forming between the researchers themselves, human, Vorak, and representatives from the Confederation worlds, each bringing their unique perspective to the work. She thought again of that moment in the forest, kneeling beside a dying alien warrior, while a nightmare creature prowled at the periphery. One decision, made without calculation or ulterior motive. One act of compassion that had somehow shifted the trajectory of interstellar relations. The galaxy remained a dangerous place. The Vorak were still fierce warriors. The Confederation still viewed them with suspicion, and 1,000 other conflicts simmered across inhabited space. But here, on this remote world of crimson forests and violet skies, something new had taken root. Possibility.